Good morning, dearest friends. Today we're making history. It's a new year, 5782. Tufshin, Pei, Bays. Get used to saying that. There's no going back. And what's special is this is the first opportunity, the first morning that we're able to halachically unite from across all of our perches across the globe. And it's so wonderful that so many dear fellow friends are choosing to tune in on a day after Rosh Hashanah, a tiring day, to once again learn Gemara. We are learning today the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. Presently studying Masechet Shabbat, chapter 7, page Ayin Hey Amud Beis. That would be 75b. We've been going through the different malachis and their applications and where they might be excluded, some of the toldot of the malachot. And I should just say, for the record, today is the 9th of September 9th, the 3rd of Tishrei, some Gedalia. And I have to confess, if you hear my voice, that's a combination of no coffee and using it a little more than usual over the last 2 days. But let's get started. It might be a little shorter than usual, but there's no better way to start the year than to see my dear friends, to see you all, and to be able to learn the Gemara and hopefully to learn a thing or two from the honored members of our Chabura. So let's share the screen, but first we got to dedicate today's learning to our dear Beryl Schuster. It's his birthday, and he always inspires us and keeps us focused and considering the halachic implications of our conversation. And Beryl, we wish you a year of Mazel and Bracha, Nachas and Gesund, and we hope you'll have a lot of mornings free to join us. Gesundheit and Freiliche. And now we'll share the screen and get started. So just to remind you of where we left off on, let's see, it was the 28th of Elul. It would have been a Sunday. We spoke about the shechita. Shechita is not a good thing to do. It's not a Shabbos thing to do. To take the life of an animal, to shecht it, is a problem. And we had a surprising statement in the Gemara. And the surprising statement was that one of the Rav says that taking shechita is a problem, not because you're taking the life of an animal, but he said it was a problem because of soveya, because of dying. And obviously that sounds like a funny comment. Rav was aware that it sounds like a funny comment, and so he qualified and said, of course, or the Gemara said, of course, we're also talking about netilas, neshama, the taking of a life. But what was important about soveya is that you can see where the shechita was, and you can see the staining of the blood, and you can also tell how recent and how fresh that shechita, the slaughtering, was, and thus that would be an essential advertisement to the freshness of your meat. So if you're a butcher and you're hoping to attract customers, one of the things that the potential customer might be looking for is how fresh this cut of the shechita was. Again, for us, it's a little jarring. We prefer to forget about how the meat gets from the animal to our table. But first of all, if we're going to eat meat, it's certainly worthy to appreciate the contribution, if I can say that, of the animal. And once upon a time, they didn't have the luxury of being in denial of how meat grows. And so you wanted to make sure your meat was fresh. And that was the final point that we studied in 5781. Now for 5782, we are going on to a new malacha, our Mishnah, which enumerated 39 different malachos, for 39 different prohibited categories of labor, of work that mustn't be done in Shabbat. So we're talking about how you get how do you get some leather? How do you get hide? And that's necessary for different things in the Mishkan and the like. So we talked about trapping and killing. That was last year. And now we're going to talk about hamolcho v'hame abdo, when you salt, or one who salts, and one who tans hide to turn it to leather. Those are prohibited acts. Salting and tanning. You may recall when we were learning the Mishnah, we had some trouble here. I had some trouble. You might remember this. Is not salting tanning? Isn't that part of the process? And we said, the tanning process, first you salt the hide and then you put into some more harsh chemicals, lime or animal waste, I think, believe it or not. So the Gemara asks our very question. Are they not a single one process. Rashi. Atu malicha lav tzorich ibudhu. Is not the salt part of the process of tanning, of working, of processing the leather? Those who appreciate the Hebrew language will notice the word for tanning in Hebrew is me'abed. Me'abed is like oived, working. And so the way you get from a hide to leather is through it, not just applying chemicals, but also processing it, working it. And so isn't salt part of that very process? So how do you think the Gemara is going to defend this question? I think it's a pretty compelling question. Well, we came up with a proposal that maybe there was multiple steps in the tanning process, but that worked for us defining different steps. But conceptually, halachically, what is the difference? And so let's see what some of the rabbis of the Gemara say. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, the Amrit Harvayo. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both came up with, they both presented the same solution. Now we know that Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan frequently in our Gemaras are debate partners. They were chabrutot, and they don't always agree. As a matter of fact, they're held up as one of the model chabrutot, study partners, and they're also brother-in-laws. So what do they answer? Apek chad minayu ve'ayil sirtu. They say they are so similar that in truth, to have a proper and authentic, accurate list of melachos, it would be appropriate to combine ma'abed and moileach, salting and tanning, as one single melacha. Excuse me. And instead insert sirtut. Sirtut. Sirtut, Rabbi Steinsaltz translates as drafting. Let's read Rashi, and then we can talk about what we know about sirtut in the context of preparing holy written items like mezuzahs, Torahs, and the like. So let's see. Va'ayil sirtut. Lefisha derech haratzanim. Those who create marketable, specific leather items, and they cut it into pieces. When you come to cut a piece that will be good for a shoe, or for a belt, or lahavdil for tefillin, you first make a line or a slight indent in the leather to reflect how you wish to cut it. I think this would be akin to today. Craftsmen many times will use a pencil to mark on an item they're cutting. Right? So this is on leather as well. So then the knife follows the line, the sketch. And the same applied in the leather that was used in the Mishkan, where they would create a, what did I just say?
They usually use chalk.
Chalk or a pencil, something that's not permanent. Right? So in leather, now today, sirtuts can also be a reference to the line that's indented into the leather, where on a Torah or on a Megillah or on a mezuzah, if you ever noticed, if you ever looked at a Megillah or a Sefer Torah, you'll notice there's a line that basically runs along the top of the letters. And so indeed, that is also referred to as sirtut, but here we're talking about tracing the lines that's placed for the laborers to cut the leather to size. And so that's a malacha that existed in the Mishkan. And so Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both proposed to switch out one of the steps, meleach or ma'abed, salting or tanning, which we said was synonymous, and they put in sirtut. No, not yet. All right, let's continue the Gemara. The Gemara continues and says, another interesting question. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna. So as we know, a lot of our discussion has been, how far can we extend the concept of our melachos? How broadly are they applied? And also how narrowly are they to be applied? So Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rabba bar Rav Huna says, Haiman de malach bisra. A person who salts meat. Can salting meat be akin to salting hide Chayiv mishum ma'abed. So he says, "Hi, man, if you salt your meat, you are actually mechayiv for the work of ma'abed of tanning leather. Why? Because I guess it's like similar enough to the way that leather, which is a little more soft, when the process becomes a little hard, more tough and durable. Well, I think we know that food, salted and preserved meats can also become very tough, though delicious. And I think maybe we're talking about people who enjoy jerky, or I think we call the kosher South African style, is it called biltong? Is that what you call it? Gabriel, you have some South African connections, right? Anyways, so
never ate that there.
so Rabbi Bar Avuna says salting meat is considered ma'abed. Rabbi says no. Ein ibud ba'ofen. It is not considered tanning ibud when you put salt on food. So machlokes, it is, it isn't. Amar Rav Ashi says, afilu Rabbi Bar Avuna. Even Rabbi Bar Avuna, who says that there is such a thing as salting and it's considered tanning. Loy Amar elo de kaboy leilo orcha. This only applies if he's trying to make his meat preserved for a long journey. As we know, meat does not last that long when it's outside of a refrigerator or a cooler. And if you want to take meat on a long trip, good luck. Not only you're going to get sick, but no one's going to want to be around you after a while. But if you salt it right and you preserve it and you make it into a jerky or some other kind of well-preserved meat, it might work. So Rabbi Bar Avuna would say it only is considered tanning when you actually desire it to be hard and also you want to have it as food. But if you are salting your food, your meats in your house, no person in their right mind would like to take good, delicious, fresh meat and make it essentially like a glorified piece of wood. Who wants to take their meat, their food, and turn it into wood? Not Rashi, that's Rabbi Steinsaltz. No one renders his food wood, practically inedible. Rashi, the kaboyle leorcha shemal chaharbe. You apply a lot of salt to preserve it very well. Tosfos says, don't get any good ideas. Don't start thinking that it would be permissible to do melicha. Melicha, which perhaps is a reference to the salting process to make meat kosher. He says that may not be biblically problematic, it's rabbinic problematic, and we'll get to it in the next few chapters. So Tosfos just tells us, don't get too excited. All right, our Gemara is going to continue. So this concludes the next step in the process of getting from an animal to leather. And we propose the new malacha sirtut. Drafting is the words that Rabbi Steinsaltz uses. What was the word I used? I don't remember. But anyways, sketching or putting a whatever that thing is that you put the pencil or the chalk. Next malacha. Hamemach mechakoi hamechatchoi. The next part of the leather is to smooth it out and to cut it up. Now, I don't remember if we showed a picture, but basically the leather, the hides that you take and you put them in the chemicals and you make them, you let them work. But then there's a process where you need to really put pressure, and the pressure, I believe, both stretches it out, but more importantly, it smooths it out. It removes any imperfections or any remaining stuff on it. Smooths it. And then when you cut it, those are two additional halachas. Excuse me. Amar Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. Rabbi Acha bar Chanina includes a method, a way that one might work the leather. Hashaf bein ha'amudim b'Shabbos chayev mishum memachik. A person who rubs the hide. The way they would do it, and I think they do this to this day, is you put clips, and you kind of put into like a frame of sorts to stretch it out, and then you smooth it out. And initially, I think there's like a special, like a handheld, sharp, not a shaver, but a kind of thing you rub on it to scrap off whatever stuff you want to remove. So if you stretch out your hide on two posts, which is the way that was meant to be done, chayiv mishum memachek, I guess stretching it out. Makes one chayiv for memachek, smoothing out. Rashi has shaf bein ha'amudim kagoin amudei achsandroish asoim chaloinos v'nismachin bechadloinos bein amud la'amud. I guess the way the courtyards, we described once the marketplace. So they'd have pillars. Certainly it's very prevalent in Roman and Greek architecture. And sometimes they'd have windows and posts, and one could stretch out the hide between these two posts to smooth it out. That's memachik. Okay. Now let's see some more applications of smoothing that is not in the context of leather. Amir Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Chia bar Abba added, Shloisha dvarim sachli Rabbi Ashi mishmei Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. There are three halachas, three items, three matters that were told to me, spoken to me by Rabbi Ashi, who was quoting Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Three halachas, three matters worthy of consideration on the subject of smoothing. Number one, Hamigorer Roshe Koloinisois Bashabas. If you smoothen the top of a post on Shabbos, Chayev Mishum Mechatech. That trimming to make the tops of the posts equal. Maybe we'll dig a little deeper in a moment, but let's just translate. We'll use Rabbi Steinsaltz's translation. One who planes the top of posts is chayiv because his cutting is precise, with precision, to make the different posts equal. Rashi, Hamegore Roshi Klinasoy. Oh, by the way, who remembers? We had a picture of a plane earlier on. We talked about the blade. Remember, we were talking about composite tools, like scissors that have parts. We spoke also of a plane that has the insert, the metal insert. Remember that? So here we're talking about, we're using that tool to smooth out the top of a wooden post. You want the two posts to be equal and flat. So that's considered precise cutting. That's a malach. This is another interesting thing. You spread out a bandage on a wound on Shabbos. Chayev, Mishum, Memachik. This could be considered smoothing. Rashi. Memarech, Retia, Machlik, Tachboishas Alamaka. Smoothing out a bandage on a wound. That's number two. There's a lot to discuss about that one. Some areas that I'm qualified, some comments I'm qualified to make, some that will turn to the Shulchan Aruch and hope for the best. V'hamisates esa even v'Shabbos. Reb Menachem, or anybody who's familiar with Yom Kippur liturgy, can you give me a translation for misates?
Yeah, someone who cuts the stone, stone cutter.
A stone cutter. Let's see, Rabbi Steinsaltz gives us a better word. Chiseling a stone. Okay. Now, again, I don't know about all this.
Let me ask you a question regarding when you said a bandage, stretching a bandage.
I intentionally smoothed over it just for the moment. I want to go through the series of Yemiraot, and then we'll go back and look at Rashi and we'll look at the commentary. So I'm not avoiding it. I just wanted to get the three comments in.
Rabbi, but common sense. I mean, what is a guy doing, chiseling, cutting stone on Shabbos? I mean, who are we dealing with here?
A person who forgot that it's a malacha. We're mamish going to go back. So hold on. Hamasates is having Shabbos, chiseling a stone on Shabbos. Chai mishumake bepatish. That could be considered make bepatish, which we said literally is hitting with a hammer, but not literally, but technically it's talking about the finishing of an item, making it usable. Rashi misates says in heaven. La'achar shenekra min ahar. Now that the stone has been uprooted from the mountain, v'netzava, and it's been carved out, machlika, and now you want to smooth it out. Shumaka bepatish, shugmar melacha, because now you can sell this stone to Herod to build Masada, or you could sell it to Herod to build the cave Maris and Machpelah, or you could sell it to Herod to build the expansion and the construction in the base, the Bayis Sheni, or anybody since then, right? We see those stones. And I saw there was an article, I didn't get to read it, it was Erev Rosh Hashanah, so I didn't really have time, but there was an article, they think they found the mountain or the area, the quarry where many of the stones that were used in famous construction projects in Eretz Yisrael, they think they found them, they can literally see the indents. I mean, I think they've known it before, so I don't know why it's a headline now, but anyways, this is a big part of construction. Dr. Hammer, if you're talking to us, you're muted. Please unmute. If you're not talking to us, now you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Sorry, you left out one. You could sell it to Herod's wife for a matzeva for Herod.
We could sell it to Herod, exactly.
I have a better idea. We could tie Korach to it and throw it in the ocean.
Yeah. So anyway, so those are three different malachis. They are certainly not the. Yeah.
Rabbi, I think I asked this question before. The product of work done on Shabbos that shouldn't have been done, is the product not tainted?
Again.
I mean, if somebody produced these stones and during Shabbos when he shouldn't have, those stones could be handled and used in building the Beis HaMikdash?
Generally,
not tainted in some way?
Well, first of all, Herod wasn't the most pious person, just for the record. The Gemara describes how Herod killed almost all of the Chachamim. There's a famous story, I think it's in Baba Basra, how he pokes out the eyes of one of the great rabbis. It was Baba ben Buta or Yehud ben Baba, now I'm mixing it up. So he wasn't the kind of guy that you wanted to bring over for tea. But generally, the principle is that you have to wait. If a malacha was done to make something happen on Shabbos, you need to wait the amount of time it would take to do the malacha after Shabbos. So it's not eternally tainted. It's tainted so long as you have an edge on anybody else doing that work.
Unless it's done by an akum, perhaps.
Unless it's done by an akum under certain circumstances. Yes.
But Rabbi, we have the story with chometz that you cannot bake during Pesach and then after Pesach eat.
That's a good question, but there's a distinction between chometz and Shabbos. Chometz, there is a prohibition of bal yeiro, bal yimatzu. You're not allowed to own it or have it, and that explicit prohibition extends at least potentially, for sure, rabbinically, maybe even biblically, even to after Pesach. But that's not the case. We're going to learn about this, so I don't want to jump the gun, but that's the gist of it. Now hold on. So it doesn't say, interestingly enough, here it doesn't say that you're not allowed to put on a bandage on Shabbos. It says you shouldn't smooth it out. Now, I'm having a little trouble visualizing what that situation looked like. I'll tell you why. I think all of us are defaulting to Band-Aids. And that's not an unreasonable default, but that's certainly not what they had in the time of the mission of the Gemara.
I'm defaulting to a tablecloth on a table on Shabbos. Can you stretch it out over the table?
Good question. What kind of memachik? So I suspect that
you're not stretching it, but you're smoothing it.
You're smoothing it. Very good.
You have.
Beryl, you're breaking up a drop.
I said the same problem with a bed sheet that you spread out.
But that's why they invented the fitted sheets, Beryl.
I'll tell you what I'm picking up. It seems to me like once upon again, I may be totally off. I didn't have a chance to do a lot of research here because of Rosh Hashanah, and it's been a very, very long time since I learned this Gemara. So I want to put out that disclaimer. But it seems like somehow over here there's somewhat of a production necessary to literally fashion the bandage. So we're not talking about simply smoothing it out. meaning it seems like what you're doing is actually something that's a little more malleable. That's the impression I'm getting. And so that would certainly be more of a concern.
A bandage could also be a dressing.
Right. So also, let's say like cream, there's other issues with cream, but let's say if you have some kind of other, mishchal, that could also be a concern with smoothing it out. Give me a minute. Let's take a peek over here. One second. So interesting. Yeah, there's discussion. Is the main issue the smoothing out of the bandage itself? Is there some kind of cream underneath it? Is there a problem if you're smoothing out such a cream? Rashi clearly is talking about the bandage itself being smoothed out. Others understand that the word retia doesn't actually mean a bandage. It means it means the stuff that's on it, spreading out a salve, a healing substance on the garment.
Well, you have to put something on the bandage, either Vaseline or a salve or an antibiotic cream, because if you don't, the bandage is going to stick to the wound. And when you take the bandage off, the scab comes right off with it.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So suffice it to say, this is a launching point, a starting point for such conversation. Now, there's another question that I just want to bring up, and actually, I don't. I think we're gonna end soon, just because my voice is. I don't know if you can hear it, but I hear my voice fading. There's a question about Band-Aids, and it's a big question. It appears that most poskim actually allow putting on Band-Aids, but it's not entirely obvious. Not so much the concern of smoothing, which may also be a concern depending on how you interpret our Gemara, but there's also the issue of removing the adhesives that are on the Band-Aid. And so I actually did something that you shouldn't really do for halachic purposes, but these are halachic sites that have authority. So the Star K, which is Rabbi Heinemann, for example, from Baltimore. So, I mean, I don't know if he wrote this, but it's certainly, well, actually, let's see if he's the author. Oh, here. So these are Piskei Dinim from Rabbi Heinemann from Baltimore, Star K. So a bar samcha that we can certainly read with comfort. How should one open and apply a Band-Aid on Shabbos? So he writes, one should pull apart the outer wrapper of the Band-Aid at the place where its two sides were glued together. So we know Band-Aids come in those single wrap, packages. And then he says one may remove the protective wrapper from the underside of the Band-Aid and apply it. So he doesn't go into much of an arichas, but the chiddush here is that on one hand, those things are like glued down, and maybe you think there's a problem pulling apart the glue. I believe he follows the psak that many others say, which is that being that it's created in a way that it's meant to be removed and it's not permanent, etc. So therefore, it's not a problem. And he it seems that the halacha does not take the impression that the issue with memachik is the material itself. That's Rabbi Heinemann. Again, without much of an arichis, we also have, I found another website. I'm going to show you two other websites just so you get a little flavor of the different perspectives. Here, this is a website. I don't know who the author is, but he says that he bases his Piskei Dinim on his studying of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch Harav. So again, this is not the text of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. This is based on his interpretation of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. He says, may one place a Band-Aid on Shabbos? So what's the problem? And by the way, there are really three problems. So let's take it as it comes. Doing so may involve tearing when you open it and sewing. How would it be sewing? Because the Band-Aid might be connecting two sides of a detached item. We're not saying that's a problem. We're just saying there's a havamina. You might think it's a problem. So let's see, opening a Band-Aid. Some poskim rule that a Band-Aid must have its wrapping, as well as the white plastic sheet removed before Shabbos. And he's quoting here the Shas Tshuvas Minchas Yitzchak. Removing it on Shabbos involves tearing. However, other poskim say that the Band-Aid can be opened on Shabbos. There is no suspicion. And here he says, it seems like the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, would believe that it would need to be removed before Shabbos. I'll have to look into the Baal Tanya more before I tell you conclusively that's his psak. Now, how do you apply a Band-Aid onto one's skin? It may be done if both sides of the Band-Aid are fastened to one's skin, as opposed to one's clothing or to the other end of the Band-Aid. Because when you use a Band-Aid to attach two separate items, that could be a byproduct of teifer, of tira, of stitching. However, on one's flesh, that is not an issue. So that's just to get another. So we have already the Star K. We have whoever this website is. And I want to show you one more thing. This is the Pesakim, based on the Piskei Dinim of the Abiyah Omer of the great Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. So they asked as follows: can you do a Band-Aid? And then he first in his answer says there are three issues. Is it an issue of healing? He says it is not an issue of healing because Band-Aids are primarily not about healing. They're about protection. Then he says it is an issue of stitching, of sewing. And ultimately, he gives the same answer that we read in this website based on the teachings of the Shulchan Aruch Harav, that no, because on skin, that's not considered stitching. Then he asks, what about tearing? Is there a tearing by removing the bandage? What you'll notice is that none of these websites, which are basically summaries of teshuvot, none of them are concerned about memachik, spreading out the Band-Aid. So it's clear, again, we're skipping many steps in the process. It's not really how you should learn. But I don't want to leave, and I know I'm cutting it short, I didn't want to leave us without at least some kind of resolution over here. It's fairly clear that the issue isn't the smoothing out of the bandage, at least not as they understand it, halacha l'maisa. Let's just see his last thing. Separating the sticky part of the bandage might be tearing. Nevertheless, here the Maran, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, who's an important, very important posek, obviously for many Sephardic Jews, not all Sephardic Jews, but a very large number. He writes that these are not problems. The paper stuck to the bandage are meant to remain there. They're meant to be removed. When does the Beis Yosef prohibit separating stuck papers if they're meant to stick together? Here, they were not meant to stick together. Then he says it's not considered sewing because there's no sewing on the human body, and also it's temporary, and therefore it's permissible. So here we have three very, very different. We have a Hasidic source, we have what we might call the Lithuanian source, and we have a Sephardic source, all saying that one way or another a Band-Aid can be applied, but you should certainly consult your own posek to find out exactly how to do it. I did see elsewhere they say that maybe you should prepare your Band-Aid. I don't think it would work. You should open it up from the package and take off the white thing that covers the Band-Aid and leave it. But I think it's going to probably lose its stickiness with dust and the like. But anyways, there's a sampling of our discussion. All of these things are All of these things are a kfitzas haderech way to say that we need to study more what exactly the definition of the machik is by a Band-Aid. But it's fairly clear that halacha l'maisa, the concern isn't simply the applying of the material on a wound. Reb Beryl, go ahead. Reb Beryl?
To open it before that's because you lose the sterilized thing if it's open to the air.
Right.
Not so simple.
Right. Exactly. I just want you to know that there are those that say that might be Shabbosly the best solution. Yeah, from the Shulchan Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch, it's clear that we're not talking. I mean, to me, it seems like it's clear. We're talking about a substance. We're not talking about the bandage itself. All right, my dear friends, I'm sorry to cut today short. I want to thank you all for joining us. What a wonderful way to launch a new year. Hashem should bless all of our dear esteemed members of the Chabura with health and prosperity and naches and success in every sense. And we should be zocheh to have a lot of time and koyach to continue learning together with Hashem's help. Thank you all for joining today. And Bli Neder, tomorrow will be a full-length shir. Thank you so very much.
Amen.
And let's close again with the wish to For a barrel, not of a happy birthday, but a year. Well, not a day, a year. A year of bracha, of mazel, of nachas, and all
Amen.
good things.
Amen. Amen.
Shkoyach, gentlemen.
Shkoyach.
Well,
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
יום הולדת שמח.